All right, let's talk about my new favorite laptop, Lenovo's Yoga Slim 7i Ultra. This thing is so special and so close to being perfect. It looks super sleek, it's shockingly light, has a beautiful screen, an amazing keyboard, and very long battery life. This is great for someone like me who wants a super portable laptop for basic tasks like browsing the web, writing, using spreadsheets, and research. But there are actually two variants of this laptop. The one we have with the base Intel Core Ultra Series 3 chip, and then there is a more powerful one with an X chip, which means the CPU name has an X at the beginning. That one offers performance similar to Apple's M5, which is definitely good enough for most coders and even people who want to do some light creative work or gaming. In my experience, the X chips are even powerful enough for me to review and make some minor changes to our videos. Our base unit here goes for $1,600, which actually isn't unreasonable for how much you're getting. Even though it has a slower processor, Josh and I both feel that it is a much better laptop for light users than the MacBook Air, which is rare that we strongly agree on something. Regardless, we would always recommend you try to get it on sale. You can use our website, bestlaptop.deals, to track prices and set a notification for when the price drops. Our only real gripe about it is that the X version isn't available everywhere right now, but we will be showing you how similar laptops perform that have that chip, so you know what to expect. The chassis of this laptop looks really good, but it's even more enjoyable to hold. When we got it in, everyone wanted to touch and feel it because it has this special coating. You may or may not know that Lenovo uses a soft touch coating on most of their keyboards. On this laptop, they've covered the whole thing in that smooth, luxurious texture. It just feels so incredibly premium because of it. On top of that, it's super lightweight, under a kilo, which is crazy. It's lighter than many 13-inch laptops, even though it's got a larger 14-inch display. The Slim 7i Ultra still has excellent build quality, though, with minimal flex on the keyboard deck and lid. The hinge is also stiff enough that it doesn't flop back when bumped around, and it opens with one hand easily due to the lip. We have ours in the seashell color here, which is a sort of creamy, slightly off-white. I like that it's off-white, but Josh would prefer it to be a more true white, like Lenovo's Legion 7i. In some regions, it's supposed to be available in Mystic Violet or Cosmic Blue. If our Slim 7X in the blue is anything to go by, it's less of a standout, but it does mean you wouldn't run into the issue of a white backlight shining through white keys. This makes it hard to see which key is which on our model. We tried putting it on auto brightness so the backlight turns off in a lighter room like my office, but it didn't seem to work very well. So you have to manually change it, which is annoying. There is also some backlight bleed around the keys, which again makes it hard to see which key is which when it's turned on. On the bright side, excuse the pun, that's the only con we have with the keyboard. It has an ample 1.5 millimeters of key travel, which makes it comfortable to type on. It's also clicky enough to feel responsive when you're typing, but it's not loud by any means. The layout is standard, and there's plenty of room between the keys, so I didn't experience any typos or mispresses when using it. The up and down arrow keys are a bit smushed together, but to be fair, I actually agree with that choice for once. Since they align with the bottom of the keyboard, it keeps this laptop's clean, cohesive aesthetic. The trackpad is another thing we like a lot on this laptop. First of all, it's a very accurate and responsive haptic trackpad, which we're glad to see is becoming more common in premium Lenovo laptops. In my experience typing, I never had any palm rejection issues as the trackpad isn't overly large, where my wrists would naturally rest on it. Josh and Seth both said palm rejection worked fine for them too, which is more relevant as they experience those issues more often. The display on this laptop looks fantastic. It's a 14-inch 2880 by 1800 OLED panel with up to 120 Hz refresh rate, over 500 nits of brightness, and great color accuracy. I also didn't detect any screen door effect or PWM flickering, which makes this display get a nearly perfect score on our website. We rate it on things like high pixel density, which this one has, making small text very crisp and easy to read. The only nit we have with this screen is that it is quite glossy. That means that in brighter environments like outdoors, even at full brightness, you might still get some pesky reflections. Now, I know I've been glazing this thing, but it does have limited ports, which may bother some folks. On the positive, there is a charging-capable Thunderbolt 4 port on both sides, which is very nice. This makes it better than the MacBook Air and Surface 13 I mentioned earlier, which only support charging on one side. On the negative, the Slim 7i Ultra doesn't even have a headphone mic combo jack. It's also lacking a USB-A port, which many people still use for mice, and an HDMI 2.1 port for using an external display. I used it with a dock, so the limited ports worked out fine for me. I'll link my dock down below. Josh also pointed out that many people are now using Bluetooth headphones exclusively, so again, this may be fine depending on your use case. Continuing with the things we think most people will care about, the battery life on this laptop is really solid. It has a very large battery considering its size and weight, and it makes the most of it. It outlasts the prior generation of this laptop with Intel's older Series 2V chips. This is particularly impressive as that one has a much lower resolution screen. Lower resolution screens require less power to run because there are fewer pixels to power, at least for OLEDs. The new Slim 7i Ultra also lasts longer than both of the MacBooks you can find in this price range. It's only beaten out by two laptops that also have lower powered chips. You'll notice the XPS 14 with the same chip does way better here, but that one has a lower resolution screen. The one with the more powerful X chip lasts the same as our non-X Slim 7i Ultra. Dell has some great battery life optimizations on these new XPSs. Compared to most laptops though, the Slim 7i Ultra still does very well. As far as performance on battery, our unit doesn't lose any performance, but our version isn't a high performer in the first place. Before we dive into how these chips perform, I just want to go over how this one was for my daily use. My normal day is just script writing and making graphs, which is at least 10 browser tabs, 3 Excel sheets, and 2 PowerPoints open at the same time. Everything felt very snappy, and when doing all of that hooked up to my external monitor, I don't remember this laptop ever getting warm or making any noise. At all. Even in its best performance mode, which is wild, by the way. That mode on other laptops usually has at least a little fan noise, but I heard nothing even when I put my ear up to it. I can't comment on whether this will remain the case for the higher-end X CPUs, but we're going to try to get one of those in, so get subscribed for that. Now, as far as actual performance results go, this 8-core chip is very basic. The X chips that will be available in this laptop have 16 CPU cores instead, with a much stronger integrated GPU. We're showing some other laptops with similar X chips on our graphs, so you can get a sense of how well they perform. The Slim 7i Ultra supposedly feeds its X chip 40 watts sustained, which is higher than the 25 watts that the XPS 14 feeds its same processor, but similar to the Prestige and Swift's power draw. Let's start with Geekbench, which tests a variety of common performance tasks. Those X chips and the MacBooks pull ahead. The Macs are way ahead in terms of single-core speeds. Moving over to Cinebench, which tests the processor when it's maxed out, the spread of laptops is similar. Laptops with Intel's X chips and Apple's M5 chips are ahead by quite a bit here. It's also disappointing that the chip in our Ultra doesn't do that much better than last year's Series 2 Lunar Lake CPU that it's replacing. As far as the minutia goes, we can see in our power draw graph from our 10-minute Cinebench run that the Ultra is definitely capable of feeding its processor enough wattage for a better X chip to perform decently well in this chassis. During intensive tasks like this 10-minute stress test, the Slim 7i Ultra stayed well within the threshold of what we consider cool to the touch. Anything under 40 is great. As far as fan noise goes, it gets a bit noisy for these tasks, but even at its highest, it isn't as obtrusive as your normal performance laptop. The Swiss fan noise on this graph is closer to what we would expect in one of those. Under 50 is generally considered acceptable during hardcore tasks like these. As I said earlier, it is a nearly silent laptop in most other scenarios. One of the special things about the X chips, and the reason we recommend them, is their stellar integrated graphics performance. This means you can play some modern games at lower resolutions on medium settings, or even do some entry-level creator tasks. Here's a graphics benchmark, Steel Nomad Lite, which is native on both macOS and Windows, just to get a sense of how much better those higher-end iGPUs are. They will be labeled as Arc B390 on this graph, and you'll notice they both land at the top. The reason is that Intel's X chips have 12 GPU cores instead of the 4 GPU cores in the lower-end Intel graphics like we have in our Slim 7i Ultra. This lines up with the graph, as the Swift does about 3 times better than our unit. One interesting thing is if we compare to the Slim 7i from last year with Lunar Lake, the chip that this is meant to replace, that one's graphics are actually better. So what we're trying to say here is if you're looking at a laptop with this chip, check out last year's version with Lunar Lake before buying. You could save a lot of money that way and not lose out on any performance. The main differences are going to be other updates to the laptop itself, like this Slim 7i Ultra has a better screen than that one. We think the speakers are pretty good on this laptop. 2 of them are facing upwards, which helps a lot with volume, and the bass sounded decent. Not XPS or MacBook levels, but pretty much as good as you're going to get other than that. Take a listen. Here's how the 1440p webcam on the Yoga Slim 7i Ultra looks and sounds. It does have IR for Windows Hello, and I feel that it looks pretty good, but we are in studio lighting. Here's how the webcam looks and sounds in normal lighting in my office. I think it looks a little blurrier, but it still looks decent. As I've said a few times, this laptop is pretty great, but upgradability and maintenance are two of its weakest points. Opening the laptop required a non-traditional 6-point, aka star bit, which not everyone has access to. There were 8 screws, 2 of which were different lengths, and while the fact that the bottom panel is flush with the edge is a boon in terms of it feeling high quality, it makes it much harder to take off. If you want some more bad news, though, there's not much you can do back here anyways. The short 2242 SSD slot is not easily accessible. There is a metal plate above it which is attached to part of the cooling solution. We decided not to take ours off since we planned to return this unit and didn't want to risk breaking anything. We also thought this was relevant to let folks know because we saw in some other reviews that the units Lenovo sent out did not have a metal plate there. We have a unit purchased directly from Lenovo, so we believe this is what most consumers will see, at least in the US.
Surprise! It's me, Josh. Sierra's at a conference and I wanted to make sure we covered Linux. So we did try to boot up Linux. Unfortunately, it failed on a critical service error. This was with Fedora 43. This is probably the last time we're actually going to test Fedora 43, as 44 is, I believe, out next week, so we're going to switch to that. We're also going to be exploring Bazzite on the gaming laptops and creator ones. Now, I do want to say big thanks to our Patreon members who are supporting us and YouTube members. There's a Linux backing tier there. You guys are really allowing us to spend more time on Linux, which is great. And if you want to help us and you aren't already, the links will be down below to that. On that note, back to you, Sierra.
If it isn't abundantly clear by now, I really like this laptop. For light users, our model is good enough for you, it's cheaper, and will likely offer better battery life than the X versions. For people like me who sometimes do creative work, like reviewing our videos, publishing, and photo editing, the X chip is going to offer plenty of performance, making this the perfect laptop, at least for what I do. Josh also wanted me to add that he feels the X chip variant is going to be a great option for coders looking for a premium laptop with maximum portability, and I agree. So, instead of giving you a solid price target for how much this thing should cost, because prices are fluctuating rapidly right now, we are instead going to say that we think the Ultra 7 model we have is probably worth around $400 more than the MacBook Air. The more powerful X-chip ones could be about $200 more than the base MacBook Pro 14, depending on how much memory you're getting in it. And then we think that would be fair. But if all of these laptops are too rich for your blood, last year's Ultra 7 chips performed just as well as the base Series 3 chips for CPU tasks, and better in graphics. Those laptops are way cheaper, so they are definitely worth considering. I'll put a link to a list of Lunar Lake laptops on our website down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.